My name is Geeta Mehta. I teach at Columbia University in New York. I'm a professor of architecture and urban design. And I also run two nonprofit organizations. We will see some slides in a moment. Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is women, social capital, and cities, because I think it's quite strange that now in this paradigm today, we have started to think about everything completely in terms of financial capital. And that's only one of the three capitals we have. We have learned to ignore, or the system today ignores social capital and ecological capital, and we are just totally trying to measure everything with financial capital. So that is one of the big themes of my research at the university and also what I teach. We believe that gender-responsive infrastructure investments, city planning, and architecture have a tremendous impact on women's growth and income. Next. Is there a clicker? Okay. I also run a nonprofit organization called URBs, User-Generated Cities. These are not top-down cities. These are cities or parts of cities that are generated by users, which we think are more successful. We think top-down cities are nearly not as successful. We are right now in Sharjah, and you all probably came through Dubai. And you may have visited Pudong in China or many of the American cities that are totally being designed for cars, not for people, and definitely not for women. So my work is about that. It's focusing on that change that needs to happen. The other nonprofit organization I run is called Asia Initiatives. The motto of this organization is to help a woman rise. We do Socratic dialogues with women and communities, and we work with the children, we work with groups of all stakeholders, and we brainstorm about what the city or the community needs to be, and then invite everyone to participate in the design process. I believe that that is really missing right now. Okay. So next, please. Right. The other big innovation we have designed at my nonprofit is called SOCs, or Social Capital Credits. It's the community currency for social good. It is how we set up a dialogue with communities. We set up on your left-hand side, you see the SOC earning menus, which could include good things you do for the community, like planting trees or cleaning the village well or desilting the pond or building a road. And by doing that, what you do is you earn social capital credits, or SOCs. It's a little bit like airline points in that you collect them and then you can redeem them for the SOC spending menu, which is on your right-hand side, which could include education, healthcare, and skill empowerment. So it's a barter system. We don't go into the community and say, let me solve your problems. We go into the community and say, what are the issues and how do you think you can solve them, and what are you personally willing to do for that? So it's a sort of barter, and it's a lot of fun working with communities, and very successful and sustainable. What is sustainability? Sustainability is not that you make an intervention and the minute you walk away, the intervention is gone. Sustainability can be interpreted in many ways. It's ecological sustainability, but it's also sustainability of development. You've all heard about sustainable development goals. No government can achieve them by itself. It really has to be bottom-up. It has to be community-generated. It has to be user-generated. So that is really a big emphasis of my work. Coming to what we are going to talk about today from city planning, women's role in city planning from inception to management. and building in between. I would just like to remind everyone of the UN Women's Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces initiative, which says that when women and girls are not safe walking on city streets, selling their goods, or shopping in marketplace, commuting on public transport, or simply using community toilets, it has massive impact on their lives. Both the threat and experience of violence affect their access to social activities, education, employment, and leadership opportunities. So cities are really at the key center of what we can do to empower women. So I would now like to introduce my wonderful panelists and request them in turn to also come here and present their work very briefly, and then we will have a good discussion with you as well. First of all, it's my big honor to introduce Yasmin Lari. Would you believe it? She was the first woman architect in Pakistan. Can you give her a round of applause, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Larry graduated from Oxford School of Architecture, UK, and was elected member of the Royal Institute of British Architects in 1969. As president of the Institute of Architects in Pakistan and first chairperson of Pakistan Council of Architects and Town Planners, Larry was instrumental in bringing about recognition for the profession of architecture and town planning. So she's a real trailblazer, and we are really honored to have her here today. As UNESCO National Advisor from 2003 to 2005, she led the team that saved the endangered Sheesh Mahal ceiling in the Royal Tower of Lahore Fort, it's a World Heritage Site. She's a member of the UNESCO Consultative Committee for Mohenjo-daro, on the board member of the Earthquake Reconstruction and Rehabilitation Authority in Pakistan, and trustee of the Transparency International in Pakistan. She's also the author and co-author of several books, and a very, very active person, not only in architecture and planning, but also in uplifting women across Pakistan. So Yasmin, can you please come and show us some of your amazing, amazing work?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Geeta, for that very kind introduction. Sorry, just give me a minute to sort myself out a little bit. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from the women of Pakistan. This is such a wonderful conference, and thank you for the opportunity for me to be here to participate with an amazing group of women dedicated to bring about change. It is difficult to say something new at this point in time. After the great presentations and wonderful speeches yesterday and today by the UN Under-Secretary General, the honorable ministers and representatives of the government, women and men experts from around the world, and learn of the amazing progress made by the Emirati women. Usually, for some reason, most of the time I'm invited to only technical conferences. And so it is a great privilege for me to be here with this extremely high-powered and highly motivated group of women. The occasion reminds me of the time when I first started working with women. It was in the aftermath of the great earthquake 2005 in northern Pakistan, which has a beautiful scenic mountainous environment. I don't know how many of you have been there, but it's quite amazing. And as you know, in every disaster, sorry, okay, all right. In every disaster, women are the worst sufferers, always. And in this case, there were loss of thousands of children through collapse of school buildings. There were 40,000 lives lost. There were almost 400,000 families that were displaced. So I went along with some of the volunteers, many volunteers, in fact, and it was the first time that I went in for humanitarian work. And we were able to build several hundred shelters in the area through volunteer participation. So at some point, I thought about 3-4 months down the road, in early 2006, I thought it's a good idea to have women's gatherings, to have a discussion with women, to see what's going on with them. And so when I suggested that, there was, at that time, the army was in charge of all the operations. And the army general said to me, he said, you know, ma'am, this is a different area. You're coming from Karachi. You have no idea what this area is about. Men don't allow women to go anywhere. Women don't like to come out of their houses. And, you know, the terrain is so difficult, nobody will come. So I said, fine. We sent out the invitation. And lo and behold, about 500 women turned up to this nice orchard. We had nothing but just an awning. And they'd been walking for miles and at least maybe even 2 hours at a time. And here they were, and they said, we came because we wanted to thank you for the work that we had been doing. But more than that, it allowed the opportunity for the first time for me to be able to mobilize them and to start the craft work that they were doing earlier, before the earthquake, which was making these beautiful handcrafted bead ornaments. And they started to earn money. And the rewarding aspect was that the police stations reported reduction in wife beating and violence. Because I don't know whether you have any idea, but after the disaster, everything, the whole thing increases. The violence increases enormously. So that was a good lesson for us to see how we can actually go and mobilize women, and that they are ready to be mobilized. So you will have to bear with me a little, as my focus today is women who are marginalized, burdened with poverty, ill health, and illiteracy, which, as you know, is the story of the third world. Since I work in heritage and post-disaster development, so you will find that my mission in life is to learn from vernacular heritage, to devise zero or low-cost methodologies, promote design of zero carbon and net zero energy structures to prevent depletion of the planet's resources, and engage women in the pursuit of their own well-being, as well as to bring about transformation in mindsets within their communities. So if I may have the slides now, please.
You have the clicker.
What is very important in the work that I do is to see how we can bring about dignity for women. I mean, there's so many things that are being done and so many recommendations that have been made, and it is all good. It's all to see that women start, that we start giving credence to their well-being. And when you look at the planning process, most of the plans that are developed do not at all care about how women have to operate, especially in housing. So this was a long time ago. The slides on the top that you will see I designed them in 1972, and these are these are really low-rise, high-density housing. That's what I believe in, because I don't think that putting, especially poor people into walk-up apartments or into two-room apartments does really any good to them. And so I try very hard every time, first of all, that we have pedestrian precincts, and that I know I had learned this from our old cities. If you've been to Pakistan, we have some wonderful medieval cities which have amazing morphology, where the streets are narrow, where it all brings people together, and there are these really small open spaces within the urban fabric, which actually are very good for integration of the people. And then within the housing, even in those old towns, you see that there are open-to-sky courts, and where the chores can be done, and kitchen farming or kitchen gardens can be developed. And what is very interesting, of course, is that allows women to keep charge of their children. They can do all their work, and so on. So I think we have to be looking at how we can actually change the way that we plan our cities, and especially when we talk of housing. So this is a very old project, but it is doing well, and it's thriving, actually, because it is really very public-friendly, or people-friendly, and certainly women-friendly. The second thing that I feel that's very important is dignity for women. So here, it's clean stoves, toilets, and shelter. I don't know whether you know, but there's something like 2-point-something billion people, 2.7 billion actually, of population who are forced to use basic floor-mounted stoves, which are totally, totally unhealthy. And there's something like 3.5 million deaths annually. And most at risk, of course, are women and children. So if you look at the images there, the second one, sorry, could you go on to the second slide, please? Oh, I can do it from here, can't I? Yes, sorry. Yeah, there it is. So you see that little oval up there? That's what the lot of the women in countries like mine are. They have to have it all floor mounted with dirt and filth around them. They use this terrible kind of wood that has a lot of smoke and a lot of respiratory diseases. And of course, the food that's served is extremely unhealthy. And this is the lot of majority of women, actually in South Asia as well as in a lot of Africa. So it's very important to concentrate on stoves, the clean stoves. And we've designed something called what we call Pakistan Chula. Chula is the stove. And it's a no-cost, disaster risk resilient Pakistan Chula. And you'll see as you will see on the left, there's a little diagram which shows how it's actually designed and how you can actually cook with the same fuel. You can cook 2 dishes, and a lot of time now we encourage actually the use of sawdust and so on. And so alternative fuels can be utilized. But more than that, it's an earthen platform which is built with lime and mud, so it's really zero carbon. And it allows people a woman to have her family, raised up from the dirt around the place, and she's able to serve food in a manner that's healthy. And then it also becomes a social place. So we need to provide clean stoves, as you can see in this, to stop unhealthy floor-mounted stoves, provide toilets. The one on the right, you can see the toilet, which is a green eco-toilet, again, built with mud and lime and bamboo, and we have to stop open defecation. Because open defecation itself brings in a lot of ills. Women are totally exposed to all kinds of indignities. They have to be in the fields, or they have to be behind bushes, and really it's an impossible state. And I think the more we can do in terms of building a lot of these toilets, the better it would be all around the world, actually. And then also how to build low-cost shelters to prevent displacement. So the next slide. I'm sorry, it's not moving. Yeah, there it is. OK, so this you can see is really how to build capacity for women. We are concentrating very hard to do that. We've opened mothers' training centers for computer literacy and craft skills in rural and urban areas. The 2 top slides show one on the left is the urban center in schools for mothers, and also on the right is the rural women's center, which is actually net zero energy. It's got solar panels, so it's really very, very environmentally friendly. And then we use actually, in terms of these skill centers, green skills are being promoted for training for post-disaster development, and then use of zero carbon and net zero energy structures to address climate change impact. We all have to be mindful. Climate, the whole scenario with the disasters is really heartrending. It's happening all around the world. And then how to use improved traditional methodologies for scaling up and fast delivery. Because these are methodologies they are used to. If we improve them, then they can have really inexpensive structures. And you can see how women are keenly learning on the slide on the bottom left as to how they're keenly learning how to make mud brick and carry on. And on the right, you can see them building their own houses. And now very quickly, this is my last slide. And I've got a couple of role models for you. There are many of them, but these 2 I've picked out specially. And so you can see the one on the top on the left is Champa. She helps housewives build earthen Pakistan Chula for $2 in Lower Sindh. She's already built 25,000 out of 50,000 no-cost stoves that we have got built. And she's earned $50,000 in 30 months. And she's the recipient of Idol Award from Governor Sindh. So that's kind of scale of things that can be. And if we teach people how to do these things themselves, there's a lot of money they can make. On the bottom, on the left again, is Karima with her own family. She was a beggar woman who actually used to beg at the famous World Heritage Site of Makhli, and she has now turned a ceramics trainer at World Heritage Site. Now she's trained another 5 families to become productive members of society, and on the right you see the kind of thing that she's making. So there's a huge potential in organizing women, get them to start learning things which they can then promote themselves, and they start earning money that way. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Please. I would now like to introduce our next speaker and panelist, Dr. Monteser Hiari. He holds a doctorate of engineering from Dortmund Technical University, MSc in urban planning and BSc in architecture. Currently, he's an academic instructor in Applied Sciences University in Jordan. With over 16 years of experience, Dr. Hiari worked for government agencies, private sector, and foreign-donated projects. He's an urban planning specialist for the World Bank project, urban planning specialist for a GIZ-funded project, technical coordinator, and project manager for many urban planning projects in Jordan. Dr. Hiari has worked in many countries in the region, including UAE, Iraq, and Yemen. With the recent launch of decentralization in Jordan, Dr. Hiari became a regional and urban planning consultant for USAID projects called Cities Implementing Transparent, Innovative, and Effective Solutions. Dr. Hiari is an alumni of the International Forum of Democracy and Peace since 2013. And alumni of the American Council of Young Political Leaders since 2007. Please help me to welcome Dr. Hiari, please.
Thank you, Gita. Thank you, Gita.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Actually, I know that many people know about city planning and urban planning, and some of us think that it's just about land use planning, so how to develop the plan. But the fact is that these plans are a reflection of the city development strategy, which includes by its default all components in the city. In the presentation, I'll make some highlights on some specific issues. And it's worth to say that women are always the pioneers in urban planning. We have today two ladies with us, experts in urban planning, but also when are we talking about engaging women? Definitely, we are thinking about the word engagement. The pioneer in the participation is Sherry Arnstein. She was health policy specialist, and she set the base for community participation. Another advocate is Jane Jacobs. So two main female planners set the grassroots of modern urban planning. That is a simple contribution of women in the field of urban planning. Our mission as urban planners is to hear the non-heard category of the community. And the non-heard category could be women or men. What we are focusing now is on women, and there are many cases from the globe that show how we can engage community in general and how we can have effective engagement of all categories of the community, specifically women. And there are many or various nature of communities. It's very easy in some communities to communicate with women, while in other communities, due to many constraints, it's hard to engage women in the planning process. Today, I'm not gonna present the easy situation of planning. I'm gonna present the hard and the extreme side of women engagement in planning, actually. In the presentation, on this slide, we can find how in the same project, men are separated from women for cultural reasons, actually. Many projects worked in that area, and they usually go and ask the mayor or the governor whom we can meet. It's not allowed to meet women, and if it is allowed to meet women, you have specific time and you have to inform them what is the agenda. Actually, we had a policy there that we have fairs to be gender sensitive as a team of planners. So we decided that we will contact these women at the same time of contacting men. And before that, we distributed questionnaires to households focusing on the contribution of women in the basic works in the daily life. And parts of the questionnaire was about the economy of women in the community. Interestingly, we found that women are the main source of economy in that region. We found that men actually do not work. They do nothing. Women do everything, and despite that, they are not engaged in any kind of any plan in that area. So our team sat with women, find the real potential of women in that area, and we met the men and found what they think about their area. The question always is, do we need women-friendly city? The other side of the question, do we need a friendly city only? In the planning process, we are not looking to make women as a separate category of the community. They are part of the community. And as His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed said, we empower the community by empowering women. We are not empower women and full stop. That's what actually we are trying to do. So always we think we need a friendly city, make a gender mainstreaming in the process, and we ensure when we incept what's inside the city and then apply the potential inside the city, we have the result of having a gender mainstreamed results. Here's another project. It shows us how women can contribute effectively, and they form the base of the local economy inside cities. Actually, in these photos, there's a city's development strategy. It was based on the local economic development, and it all relied on the women contribution. This contribution always was behind the scene. Nobody had seen this contribution before, but when we started to investigate what's inside the city, we found this result. Now the question is, are women in some specific cultures able to publish their contribution? This was the target for us. We want them to publish their contribution, and we want everybody to know what women actually do in the local economy of the city. So the social media was a good solution for us, and this is the first step, how to let them participate in the local community, how to market the products, how to empower them, as Yasmin said, by knowledge, by training. Then financially, are they able to create self-generating income projects? That was the short-term target of our strategy. So we found the social media is one of the solutions that we can use. And through the social media, there's a very unique project in one of the cities. It's a hostel in one of the heritage buildings, and it was based actually on the products of these women. All the souvenirs presented, all the food presented. And we have reached a certain point where the queen visited, and the top left photo is the Queen of Jordan. She visited the project and met the women who were behind the scenes. So now it's obvious that they have the real contribution to the economy of the city. Another highlight is the urban environment. Is it safe always to live inside cities? Not only for women, for everybody, actually. Specifically women, in some times of the day, whether it's nighttime or daytime, it's hard actually to pass through the city, to use the sidewalks, to use the streets, to use the public areas. And here I present some of the photos showing a street where it's nicely paved, it's very green, but it is empty. So a woman thinks before passing through these trees, shall I go inside these trees or shall I stay there? Even in the daytime, it's not safe to stay alone. This is what we as urban planner are thinking about, actually. So we have some specific guidelines we usually follow to be sure that women are, or the city is friendly, not only to women, to everybody. I'm thinking about my daughter, my wife, my sister, even about myself. Is it safe or not? It's found that we need to create a safe, behavioral-oriented place. What's the behavior in our community? And what do we need to create to fulfill the behavior and also to avoid bad behaviors? And what city we need to hear the voice of advocates? In this event, we all are advocates. We believe in one issue, and we are advocates to give the voice or to let people outside this venue hear our voice. So our city is equipped enough to make people hear the voice. Our advocates are able to say what they want to say. Actually, it's through the management of the city, which is part of the urban planning. Do we really serve the community? Not specific parts of the community. Yasmin has just showed us specific examples and showed us how to serve the community. And there are many good examples about it. What was the result, actually, if we have all these questions? We need a space which is active all of the day, all the time, whether it's daytime or nighttime. There are specific functions, just like maybe clinic, maybe pharmacy, maybe many functions that work during the daytime and nighttime. So we need these functions to be part of the spaces. And now in planning, we are thinking always about the mixed use to avoid any social disease, which is violence, harassment. We use mixed use to be sure that there is also an active space, there is no vacant space inside the city. There is lighting all the time during the night in the city. If we observe the pictures, we know that when we have light, for example, as in the last image on the right side, the light helps us, and the active space helps us also. Okay, so do we have light? Do we have security control and safety control procedures? These all together serve our goal and making the city friendly to its users, and part of the users is the woman. Now, there are many other elements inside the city, and sometimes we see the ramp instead of the stairs. We think about the disabled people, maybe. We think about the wheelchairs. No, we think about not only this category. We also think about a woman or man pushes the trolley in the street, where to go. We think about any category of the community and how they use the city. Another question: who makes the planning and architecture work? Here's a simple statistics from my country, from Jordan, showing that half of the planners and architects are female, or let's say it's a balanced percentage. In the chart below, how firms deal with planners and architects. we find that some firms are gender balanced when hiring architects and urban planners. Some of them, like number C, only hire male planners and architects. One of them is hiring more female than male. So even in the firms, let's say it's balanced, and this is a positive point. The statistics that I have not posted on this slide is that this is actually according to the registered professionals. Maybe they do not all work in the field. The negative or the shocking percentage is that in urban planning, 9 people only work in these 5 firms. 11, sorry, not 9. 8 of them are male, and only 3 female urban planners work in these 5 firms. This is not gender balanced. Our future, actually, or my next research will be why women are not represented enough in the field of urban planning practice. My plan is to go maybe meet a sample of the female urban planners, meet the firms, maybe meet the clients. Do clients prefer to have female urban planners, or they want to meet male urban planners, or any business owner? I think hopefully after 2 years in the next summit we can have an answer for this question. Actually, these were the highlights of my speech today. So thank you for the time, and sorry if I'm taking lots of time presenting the slides. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we will continue from the last thing that Montaser said, that at least in Jordan, there are many, or almost equal number of men and women in architecture schools at least. In the United States, it's very much the same, that when they start in school, there are actually 3 in 5 students are girls. But when they start to practice, girls drop off, women drop off. So the people who get an architectural license is just 1 in 13. So we see that there are many hurdles, not just in women going to architecture schools, but actually practicing the profession and sticking with it. So it is, in fact, a male-dominated profession, architecture as well as urban planning. And so I would like to ask the audience, why do you think that is the reason? Why are there not more girls in the profession? Please, Sophia. Is there a microphone, please, for the questions? Why don't you give her?
I think he's getting.
Okay, she's bringing.
Yeah,
There's one coming. Thank you.
Firstly, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think there's 2 elements that come in here, and one is in our effort to focus on women empowerment, we've made that a mission when we've forgotten the objective of women empowerment, which was people development, not women development. Mm-hmm. And it was a means to balance out how societies would develop. So the focus has become so much on women empowerment that we've forgotten that 2 things are happening here maybe. And one is, and there could be more, it's just this is my opinion. One is, firstly, yes, you say women drop out, and we assume because they're marginalized always. Okay, we're also assuming that there's a lack of balance if there's not equal men and women represented. Mm-hmm. There's one aspect where, yes, this is sometimes exactly the way policies work and the way structures are set up, where it does marginalize women, but there's also the other instance where when you're saying these women are dropping out, sometimes it's their own choice, mm-hmm. because they have different choices that they want to make. They don't see just a corporate or urban or professional world as the only way of living. Their profession is being nurturing in society, in their home. They have other, when you started, you said we're so focused on finance and we're forgetting society and I'm not sure what the third one was, I just forgot.
Ecological
Yes,
capital.
ecological. Now, the woman's natural tendency maybe is to focus on the social and ecological, which means their success is not measured by how out there they are, but how successful they are where they are. And maybe they want to be educated because the intellect is craving that stimulation, but at other times it's like some women want to take it in a career direction, others want to just develop themselves, and that's good enough. And what I'm hearing, and I was listening to Dr. Hiari, and I just actually, I learned something, it just struck me. It's so important to see city planning and urban planning not as the development of housing and buildings and roads, but in fact, it's the framework for a development of a psyche of the people, the society that's going to live within that. So urban planning takes into consideration emotions, peoples, and I think I learned this in a very harsh and embarrassing way for myself when there were floods in Pakistan, and initially in 2009, I just particularly used an organization to put up a prototype home which I thought would be suitable for flood victims. And planning it the way I thought a woman would want to be comfortable based on my life in South Africa and the way I was brought up. So I put in the washroom facilities within the house because I thought that was convenient and safe and practical. But I was then asked by the first donor that we gave it to, a grandmother with two grandchildren, and her son had died in the floods, that which fool or idiot put the dirty facility within the house? Why is it not outside? And for me, it was, well, I've given you a home after the floods, and then I realized actually we were not taking into consideration the psyche of the people and what they needed. And a lot of that was touched on by Dr. Hiari, which when indirectly through what he was saying, made me realize that we're not really building homes, we're actually building lives.
Yes.
And I know my work with Heritage Foundation has proven that repeatedly. So I think there's just two aspects here, that we're deciding that women are left out, but sometimes we must also ask them, are they choosing to do something differently?
Thank you. You've actually touched on very, very many aspects of the question, and I appreciate that. I think that, yes, cities and the built environment is a stage set for life to happen, for activities to take place, but that stage set also needs to be cognizant of women's needs. And, Yasmin touched on the issue of toilets, for example. This was not just an issue in developing countries, but even in European countries, in United States, women were really hampered from doing very much because there were no public toilets. So once that need is understood and met, women become able to do very much more. Similarly, if there's no public transport and women can't drive, they're really stuck. So city can be an enabler in many ways. And yes, women can have the choice. At the end of the day, it is about women having a choice, right? But that choice must be there, and the choices or possibilities must be understood by planners. I'm going to ask Yasmin again that, you touched in a very powerful way of women's needs for the chula, the smokeless chula, and the toilet. What are other key elements that a woman needs in the city that you think are not met right now?
Well, of course, when you look at urban planning, I think the whole way we design is really not conducive to people. It's not, all the cities are designed for cars.
Cars, right.
And that's a very major flaw in most of the cities that we live in. And even in the most disadvantaged areas, we will see huge kind of, roadways being built. But I have to say one thing on this, and there's this whole driverless car coming into being, hopefully within the next very few years. And they might just liberate women from this whole issue as to how they get from one place to the other, especially if they do it in public transport of that kind. But that's just an aside. But I think it's going to change the whole way that we actually design our cities, which will be another challenge when we see that. But the whole thing is this, that in cities, there are no public toilets for women. You go to any city in my country, and I think many other countries, no public toilets for women. So women are really, really left far behind, and most of the reason is that most of the men, as very rightly pointed out by you, they're mostly men designing, and they don't even think that women actually have this need. So more women come in, and I agree with Safia, women should be trained, whatever they want to do, they must learn, and then they can decide whether they want to do it or not. But because it brings about a certain level of understanding, of knowing what is needed, and hopefully things will change. But we have to make the change very fast, because we're really far behind with all this. And everywhere you find, whether it's rural areas or urban areas, women are suffering because there are not enough people in the teams. There are not enough women in the teams who can go and talk to other women. So somehow this balance has to change very rapidly.
You know, you bring up the issue of no understanding of the need of women in the toilet. Have you heard of Sally Ride? She was one of the first women astronauts who went up in space in 1983. And she was asked by her colleagues that she was going up in the space for 1 week, and she was asked that would about 100 tampons be enough for you? So, you know, who's thinking this? Who's talking? People are not really understanding women's needs in any significant way. So I thought that, yes, there needs to be much better understanding. And Yasmin also brought up the issue of cars. We are designing cities for cars. I was looking down from my hotel window on the road outside of Hilton Hotel, and the traffic jams are quite amazing in a city that has so many roads and relatively not that big a population. But the truth about cars is the more roads you build, the more cars will come, right? I want to ask the audience what you think has been the longest traffic jam in the world so far. The longest traffic jam in the world. Where was it and how long was it? Can anyone guess? So let me just tell you. Yes, go ahead. 4 days. Can anyone improve that, up that, more than 4 days? Anyone? Make a guess. Make a guess. Be very bold.
There's somebody raising
yes.
their hand.
How much?
10 days.
10 days. Can you improve that? Yes, yes. Can you improve that, please? Be very bold, yes. How much? 20. Can you improve that? Anybody else wants to take a guess?
I think you have to divulge the secret.
It was for 2 months. In Beijing, a traffic jam happened. It lasted 2 months. People actually waited a few days, then they just left their cars and went. So the cars, it took them 2 months, right? 2 months to clear the cars. So there is no end to how much you can design for cars and where it will take you. In my country, in India, and I'm sure it's the same in many other countries, they remove sidewalk and make the road wider for cars. Whereas the number of people in the cars in India are about, let's say, 6% at the most. So 94% who are walking on the street are, they remove the sidewalk. So our priorities are really, really crazy at this point. We are designing not for women, not even for men, but we are really designing for cars. And unfortunately, when you look at Dubai, you look at Sharjah, you look at Pudong in China or Gurgaon in India, or many, many cities around the world, these are cities for cars. They are instant cities that come up in a very short time. And we call them parking lots for money because they are not driven by any need, but they are actually driven by some real estate calculations. So, that's how we are designing cities. So we need to make a big turnaround and bring women-centric planning, but also people-centric planning. I'm going to challenge you a little bit because you said that these women are working, are supporting the planning process in the background, right? So my question to you is, what needs to happen that women's participation becomes more in the foreground and more in the center space? What would you say?
Yeah, actually, any change, I believe that it will not be a sudden change. So it will be gradual. Actually, the first step from our side was how to engage them in the process and how to have their contribution appear in the process. And in future, when they are empowered in knowledge, in practice, in maybe economically also, they will have the more effective role. So as men, we are jealous most of the time, okay? We don't want women just to jump in front of us. So let's make it gradual in certain communities. But also there are many cultures or many communities where women are side by side with men. So as I told you, I have the extreme side of the communities, and that's what we are dealing with. And I want to go back to the issue of urban planning is touching lives. Yeah, I agree. It touches lives. And now the shift is on the urban planning from being a pure technical science to be a social science. And it started to be a social science, actually, because it's related to the legitimacy of planning, to whom we plan. Actually, we plan for the community. We are not planning for ourselves. And I have never planned for the city where I live. You know that? I plan for other cities. So I plan for them. I will give them the documents, the strategies, the plans, then give them my back and return back to my home, you know? So do I really touch their lives? Do I really know what is the cultural factors I have to deal with? Do I really touch the real problems in that city? That's what we are thinking about usually. And that's what makes urban planning is a multidisciplinary field more than being one field for one person who can practice all the process. No, actually it's based on a team that should be an economist inside the team, a socialist, archaeologist, tourism specialist, marketing specialist, infrastructure specialist. Every component that touches the life of people inside the city should be studied. And the role of the urban planner now is how to communicate or how to communicate with specialists, coordinate all the roles, and then come up with this city plan, actually. So yeah, I agree, we touch all lives, and we are trying, to do our best, actually, affecting the marginalized group, including women.
Do you think that, just as a follow-up question, do you think that social media and new technologies are going to make that participation easier?
Yeah, sure, actually. The discourse, the traditional way of discourse, let's say it was through the TV. But now we have a new, with these new technologies, we use the new mean of discourse, how I make the dialogue, or how I send my message to other people. Most of the people, even in poor communities, use smartphones. You know, maybe they do not eat, but they buy a smartphone. And I think this is a very effective way how to reach them, how to send them the message you want to do. And I think the awareness now in men's side is increasingly noted, you know. And hopefully it will be very balanced in the near future. And yes, I agree that social media is affecting.
You know, I'm thinking about the Me Too campaign that happened in the United States recently, the issues of sexual harassment, and then women saying, wait, it happened to me too. So I'm just thinking that in terms of urban planning, if specific issues could be framed and people could be asked, do you want to comment on that? You were enthusiastic about that. There's a microphone coming. Just wait 1 minute.
Thank you for highlighting this important issue. Back to the point for the hashtag #MeToo and telling the ladies their stories with the harassment and things and the violence around the world. It's not only about the social media. Social media plays a huge role in paying attention to the details or to the incidents that it's happening on a daily basis. But what we're looking for is what's next, what's behind the social media. It's I think it's on a bigger scale, like the role of our governments, the laws, the parliament, and even the organizations. So what's next after the social media? Where are the solutions? Whom we looking for to help in raising these awarenesses? It's not only on an individual base, this is my opinion, that it should be on a bigger scale. So what if, okay, we empowered them, what's next? What if we have, like the statistics says that we have in Jordan 50% and 50%, but what about the labor law? Like in the previous session we were saying that if you get pregnant, because of your maternity leave, they will tell you, okay, we don't need you anymore. So it's not about only the education, it's about the whole cycle of women empowerment. Thank you.
The whole ecosystem in which men and women live. But I'm going to ask Yasmin to comment on that question. How do you engage the government and decision makers? Because in our private conversation, she was saying, where's the political will? So I'm going to ask her to comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a question. Should we take that first?
Yes, is there another comment on that? Yes, let's take both and then you can
Thank
answer.
you. Thank you so much. It's really lovely to hear all of you. Thank you for all of your presentations. I wanted to just mention one of the things that for those of us working in technology and hearing some of what was being said in the context of city planning and people's lives in cities, I wanted to just raise a comment and a question. One is, I don't know if you're familiar with something called the Equals. It's a global partnership of UN agencies and many others, including ourselves, who are working around access, leadership, and skills issues. But one of the things that we organize is these tech awards. It's called now the Equals in Tech Awards. And one of the finalists were announced
Tech
just a few
awards.
weeks. Yes.
Okay.
Equals in Tech. So equals for,
Okay.
equality. And there were quite a few projects on the list. I was just looking that are now finalists for these awards. There are actually solutions to make cities safer for women and girls. A lot of them are solutions, tech solutions to help with issues around harassment. So that's an issue that is becoming, unfortunately more, but it's one good solution that technology can help. So people can not only get help, report cases, et cetera, but there's others. And what I wanted to ask you all, as architects, city planners, urban planners, is how do you think about especially technology solutions in the context of new design? Because, cities are also changing shape. People are using tools in different way. So can technology, and I don't mean just mobile technology, I mean also other kinds of technology. Technology is very wide. How can technology help make city planning and urban planning more people-centric, really, which is what Yasmina and you also were mentioning. Cities are not being planned from a woman's perspective. But is there a role for of technology to do that? I would love to hear from you. I know about a few initiatives, but I would love to hear your perspective, especially from the very complicated cities that you all work in, of how that can be the case. Thank you.
Can I ask a question from you, from the technology people, actually?
Sure.
Because I think the biggest problem is that everything, all the planning is being done in isolation, I believe, even by the experts, with due respect. Because we are not listening to the people. There has been no way by which you would really go and see what the feel of the people is. Otherwise, we would not have these insane cities. Today in my country, so many heritage buildings are being destroyed, both in Karachi and in Lahore in a big way, because they want to put up these enormous transportation networks and so on and so forth. And even though there may be protests, but government is not listening. So is there a way by which common people can actually pressurize the government to say what their needs are, or women can pressurize and say what their needs are, and that could become part of a plan? Because right now this is not happening. We have to make it happen. We have to stop this insane, allocation for vehicular traffic. I've got, in Karachi now they put up these enormous flyovers all over the city, destroying the very environment of the city. And how do we give voice to the people? Through technology. So you have to come up with some sort of a solution, I mean, the hashtags, or how do we actually, make a cohesive group, which then starts to influence policy making. Got to be done. Government's got to be made
It's
to
one thing
listen.
technology can help is with that public participation, right?
Yes.
And I think in many cities, urban areas, and even in rural areas, but in urban areas has been one tool for public participation in the planning process. So, but the thing is, I don't know if you heard me speaking earlier, the reality is that in many of the cities that you're talking about, there's really not that much access to technology for those who want to participate, But there is some, and those can bring a voice, and they can bring the voice of their community. So they can use the platforms of to bring their voice. But it's a bigger issue. I mean, I think it's an issue for your profession, right?
Yes, yes.
Because it's, I mean, I want to hear from you, but I feel like how many city planning departments, urban planning departments are there even in cities, governments?
But I think the issue is a little bit bigger also. The issue is that technology can be one piece of the solution, but it certainly is not the only piece. And I'll tell you, in my country, in India, there's a 100 Smart Cities initiative. It was proposed by the government, Prime Minister Modi, and everybody's super excited about it because there's lots of money allocated to that. But the point is that can you make a smart city with technology if you planned it wrong? For example, what is happening in the current or what is considered modern town planning is that there's one area for housing, there's one area for commercial, one area for recreation. Everything is chopped apart, right? So people have no choice but to now commute from one place to another and spend a big part of the day doing that. Whereas traditional cities were mixed-use cities, and you brought up, Montessori, the issue of mixed use as well. So if you plan the city wrong in the first place, no amount of technology is going to come to your help. What is your perception of a city when you go to London or Paris or Florence? What are you thinking of going to? You're not going to go inside a building. You're going to be on the streets. You're going to be in public spaces. You're going to enjoy the nice scale streets that make you feel very comfortable, human scale. And you're going to go to these plazas where there are hundreds of people. People like to go where there are other people. And the best test for public spaces that there are women and children there, right? So you want to design public spaces and streets for them to be people-centric, have the correct scale and comfort. And then, of course, technology can come. And technology can be a very big partner in, for example, transportation solutions, right? That can, to a great extent, be helped, whether it's Yasmin's driverless cars or other technologies. Yes, please.
Thank you. I may add something. Actually, what happens now for technology is that it's one part of the planning process. So what we are practicing now is employing technology in the planning process. But there's no process that targets technology. Actually, if we analyze the cities in the last 50 years, maybe, or 70 years, we find that two main factors affected the cities: IT and transportation. So what technology we use for infrastructure, for our daily life, anything, the technology actually affected the social life, affected the means we use to make anything in our life, and the transportation system. These are the two main factors. Are we designing or planning a city for IT? Not. This is actually what we are doing. We employ IT during practicing the planning process. So when we plan, we use some technology applications. Maybe when we implement, we use specific IT. Now, the use of IT is becoming very essential in the management of the city itself. So when we start to implement the plan, we actually rely to a very much high degree on the IT. And this is what we are doing. And I don't know, maybe in future we will have some other approach. So actually, I don't know if we can get back to the question of engaging governments. So you
Please,
were asking
please.
Yasmin. No, Yasmin, please. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you are right, actually. And one of any urban planner's dream is that government will speak the same language we are speaking. Yeah, they have some political agendas, they have some other considerations. And if we see what successful urban plans actually implemented in the world, we find that there is a political will behind it. Without the political will, we cannot actually make any successful urban plan. So they should be engaged in, or be partners in engaging the community, engaging the women, engaging any category inside the community. And yeah, hopefully, one day we find a real planner who become a political person with the same perspective of planning, you know, because I'm afraid that he will change the beliefs after becoming a political person. Thank you.
That brings me to one comment that you had earlier also made about Jane Jacobs. I mean, she was an American woman, not even a planner, she was a journalist. But she rose up, gathered her community to question what the government was doing, what Robert Moses, you might have heard about, he was a big real estate czar, was doing. And she questioned, tearing down of streets, making of big highways. He proposed actually a highway that would run right through Manhattan and destroy the village and so on. And so fortunately she was able to defeat his plans. But the government intention and the government will is one thing, but as Yasmin says, to be able to bend that, how do people come together to bend that, to bring the focus that we want on sustainable development, on women-centered development? There's a wonderful movie about her that's now just been released. It's called Citizen Jane, The Fight for the City. I recommend you see it if you get a chance. I had a chance to make a pitch in that. I think that coming back to women-centric issues, women-centric planning, I just want to highlight and have Yasmin comment on her idea that women were more involved in technology and building of cities and building of buildings when in traditional cities. Would you say that?
Yeah. You see, traditionally, women have been engaged in all kinds of activities to do with building of a home, for instance. And they're the ones who have been the most important people in running the house and doing whatever is necessary. Today, because we bring in technology, we bring in materials that they have no familiarity with, they actually cannot be engaged in that. So we're losing out on that where, they could build things with identity. I don't know whether you saw or noticed in the Pakistan chula, every chula of those 50,000 is a designer chula. Because the woman has been able to to identify with it, to really make it her own. And this is my dream, that if we can teach women, then, in Sindh alone, we have something like 1 million households that are without shelter. There is no reason for this if we can just provide the necessary training to the women to be able to build, and you will get them at hardly any cost at all. So the involvement of women is important because we found also always that there's a huge amount of commitment to whatever they do, which we don't find in men as it happens. But also because there's this centuries of being overlooked, of not being involved. I think they're constantly trying to make up now. So I think all the women sitting there, I'm sure that all of us are suffering from all kinds of guilt and so on, because maybe we've neglected something that was our role and we've not done it. And I think the time has come that we should just take on and carry on and forget about any kind of, this kind of conscience-stricken feelings.
This room, everybody who's here at the conference is a change maker and has that responsibility. Yeah. We have time for one last question. Yes, very short, very short.
Oh, there's another one here.
Oh, one there and? Just one? Let's ask both questions and we'll see if we can answer them in 1 minute. Yes.
Masal Khair. My name is Aisha. My question is, do you think that we still plan cities with the mentality of a curfew timing for women and children? You have planned cities, you have done things, and you've seen times change over a period of time. Do you believe that the concept of curfew timing, right, until what period of time it is still safe for women and children to be out and about? Are we still planning cities around that concept? Because that goes hand in hand with our mobility solutions. How far is something from our place of residence, whether we're chopping things up, whether we're making it mixed use? So is that mentality still prevalent? Relevant, yeah. That's my question.
Please, I think you have answered your own question in asking that yes, that totally should not be what we should be doing. Let's hear the other question.
My question is particularly for Yasmin because I know she's very involved in the development of women and training and skills. How can there be a means of including mentoring of people who become chain mentors, if I could read. So it takes a viral effect that's almost using people as technology because we send messages that go viral. So how could we make people go viral in communities where this kind of development needs to happen? And one very quick suggestion, which one of the key elements of a city and city planning was the library for a means of accessing information where voices who are allowed to speak in print were recorded and kept there. Can we not now create libraries where the source is not only, the facility is not only as a source of gaining information, but within the new artificial intelligence that's coming up with technologies and the whole system of being able to collate information and check trends, where you leave a library facility where it's affordable, it's free access, like you get books to borrow for free. You're allowed to voice your opinion for free on technology. It doesn't take much space. And you get the trends and views of people on a variety of topics, not just city planning, where the computer itself generates the trends of people's behavior and recommendations. It could be something you could use.
Thank you.
I think she's given the answer.
Yes.
Of course,
Again,
yes,
it's a
wonderful,
great
yes.
advice
Let's do it.
and a very good idea. And our time is actually up at the same time. So I want to just thank our tremendous panel. Thank you, Montasir. Thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you,
and thank you. You've been a tremendous audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. You've done a fantastic job of putting it together.